WTO is associated with long talks, various tariffs, customs quotas, imports and exports, as well as with other terms which our consumers sometimes do not understand. The task of WTO market program is to break all the barriers between buyers and sellers because we know everything about the prices. Will the metal industry of Kazakhstan attract investors? What metals will be produced in Kazakhstan in the near future? And what is the profit from metal exports? An Australian-British corporation is seeking copper ore in Karaganda region. It expects to discover copper mines with total extracted reserves of at least 1 billion tons of ore. The investment in search stages amounts to almost 3.5 billion tenge. The demand for aluminum in the car industry is growing. The reason for that has become the task for world car makers to manufacture more power and fuel-efficient vehicles from lighter metals. Researchers from Dhaka Worldwide expect that during the next decade, global consumption of aluminum by light car makers will exceed 15 million tons. Kazakhstan inherited the network of metallurgical enterprises from the Soviet Union. Giant plants are still working in the territory of the country. Over the years of independence, new facilities were opened. For example, the copper plant with the capacity of 70,000 tons annually was commissioned only 5 to 6 years ago. Even the new refinery near Astana was constructed from scratch. Nowadays we produce what we didn't produce in the Soviet era, for example, aluminum. Currently we have a plant with a capacity of 250,000 tons. We even plan to expand this plant. Metallurgic plants in Kazakhstan are export-oriented. 1/5 of all industrial products in Kazakhstan are manufactured by the metallurgical sector. More than 90 copper, more than 50 zinc, more than 50 lead, more than 20 bauxite, more than 30 molybdenum, 12 wolfram, more than 100 silver and more than 170 gold deposits have been developed in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has the world's 8th largest iron ore deposits. More than 73% of them are easily extractable. The country also has major stocks of chromite ores, which form the base for domestic ferro-alloy plants. Metallurgy is a priority branch within the framework of the State Program for Industrial and Innovative Development of Kazakhstan. Attracting investment is one of the program's tasks. All we understand that the investment climate is formed by many factors, and the accession to the WTO was perhaps one of those important signals to major international investors. Even in the early 2000s, Kazakhstan was recognized as a country with a market economy that should make another step forward investment attraction. Nowadays, modernization of factories is the key question for the industry. There is a need to raise labor productivity and added value of finished products. These are aims of each factory and of the whole country. On the one hand, export of ores is declining. On the other hand, we are constructing our own processing plants. We're also planning to build new factories and furthermore to develop processing industries around these factories. In case of aluminum, we are talking about building of so-called aluminum cluster in Pavlodar region. This implies production of hardware with higher added value, in particular aluminum goods. This sector is receiving a powerful backing from the state. Currently, more than 300,000 people are employed in the metallurgy. Our current legislation provides for benefits for new players, or in other words, new enterprises. They will be exempt from some taxes, in particular corporate income taxes, land taxes and property taxes. The situation in the secondary metallurgy is more complex. Scrap stockists were expecting Kazakhstan's accession to the WTO because the export tax for iron scrap would be reduced from 15 to 5%. Still, the law prohibits Kazakhstani scrap producers to export scrap abroad the country. Of course, we are expecting much more from the accession of Kazakhstan to the WTO, because the WTO prohibits such things as putting of bans in force. the WTO makes the market more successful and efficient. But unfortunately, Kazakhstan has left for itself some loopholes in the law which, in particular, affect our sector. This means that the ban on scrap metal export to some extent contradicts the WTO principles. Nonetheless, borders are closing. In general, we could successfully cooperate with Iran, Turkey and Azerbaijan.
В рамках принципов ВТО.
Kazakhstan exports ores and metals to Russia, China, Turkey, EU countries, the US, or in other words, Italy and Germany are key importers of Kazakhstani copper, the Netherlands of titanium, and the US and Turkey of aluminum. China accounts for approximately 50% of imports. In general, we have stable markets in China and Turkey. Sales of each metal have their own specific features. In most cases, we deal with wholesale trades. Exports destinations constantly vary and there are no long-term contracts. Still, we supply metals even to South Asian countries. The world metallurgical market is very dynamic and it is always necessary to monitor the demand, what Kazakhstan is now doing.
Есть даже такие металлы, как олово, например.
In Kazakhstan there are metals like, for example, tin, which have never been produced. Currently we have a concrete project on extraction and production of tin in North Kazakhstan region. Therefore we can say that the industry continues to develop and nowadays is one of the most successful in Kazakhstan's economy.
Успешных в казахстанской экономике.
Over the last 2.5 years, the role of metallurgists in the economy of Kazakhstan has significantly increased. Kazakhstan started to sell greater amounts of ferroalloys, copper, unprocessed aluminum, zinc and lead. For example, in the period between January and June 2017, sales of ferroalloys exceeded $1.5 billion. This is 85.2% more than in 2016. At the same time, the quantity of shipments rose only by 13.6%. How to protect a vehicle against corrosion? What role does Kazakhstan play on the world metallurgy market? What does South Korea complain about in the WTO? Any metal, including those covered with paint, is apt to corrosion. Most commonly, it affects our vehicles, especially in autumn and winter. Experts recommend to inspect our car body for rust at least once a month. It is advisable to remove its traces as soon as they have been detected. Dark spots on a car body may be a signal that corrosion appeared under the paint coat. The main products of the iron industry are steel and cast iron, which are used in the production of rolled metals, metalware, pipes and other goods. The metallurgical industry is one of the most important aspects in the economy of any state because it acts as a driver of machine building and construction development. According to the World Steel Association, most of steel, 68.5%, is produced in Asian countries. About 10% is produced in the European Union, approximately 7% in North America, and about 6% in CIS countries. China accounts for about 50% of the world's steel and cast iron output. Production and consumption of steel all over the world is growing due to the increase in machine building and housing construction.
В рамках ВТО в настоящее время рассматривается вопрос о вхождении.
The issue of Kazakhstan's joining to the Steel Committee of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development is being discussed in the WTO. In fact, the ground rules described in the OECD Steel Committee should help to establish efficient business in Kazakhstan.
Помогут построению эффективного бизнеса в Казахстане.
In 2017, an increase in prices for metals can be observed. The reason for that is a $115 billion investment into the railroad construction in China. This will lead to the increase in demand for steel products, rails, wire and so on. South Korea is filing a complaint against the US to the WTO. The Korean government announced that during the upcoming meeting of the Subsidies and Countervailing Committee, it will raise the issue about legality of actions of the US, which in April 2017 increased anti-dumping duties for Korean oil and gas pipes. Recently, the US President Donald Trump told about the necessity of further restrictions on importation of steel products to support the American metallurgical industry.